Hello, today I'm going to be planting some tomato seeds. So it's the 20th of February 2022 and here I have three lovely varieties. So the first one is Grushovka Tall Bush Tomato, very rare, one of our favourite Russian tomatoes, bushy plants about 2 to 3 feet, make large egg-shaped deep fruit tomatoes with a pink skin, early to fruit and high yielding. These came from real seeds. Here I have the House Dwarf Cherry Tomato, a unique heirloom variety, originally from Russia, then brought to Canada in the 1890s. This dwarf tomato plant has been bred for growing in pots on a windowsill. Once again, they came from real seeds. The next one is Gardener's Delight, which, if I remember correctly, are a German variety. They're one of my favourite varieties to grow. Small tomatoes, nice, sweet, tangy taste, and I really like them. So my way of growing tomatoes is relatively simple, and what I do is I get cell trays this size here and I fill them with multi-purpose compost. You can see here I've got my bucket of multi-purpose compost elevated on some logs here, but I usually stand up when I fill up my pots, but this video I'm showing you down here. So multi-purpose compost, this is home-based brand, nothing else added to it, and I simply just proceed with a trowel to fill up my cell trays, and I push them down relatively firm so that the seeds have a nice firm base in which to germinate from. There we are. So planting the Gardener's Delight seeds, and these came from Wilko's, and it simply is just one, whoops, just dropped two in that one, there you go, put that one in there, and it literally is just one in each cell within the tray. So there they are, all planted up. All three varieties planted exactly the same way, and then I proceed to cover with multi-purpose compost. You can see I have my tags on, and what I like to do is write the date in which I planted, so the 20th of February, the variety, Gardener's Delight in this case, and what it is, tomato. That way you can refer back to what you planted when, and it can be very beneficial for the future and of course for this year, because it's nice to know what you're growing. So I then proceed to water using my little watering can here. I shall now proceed to place these on an indoor windowsill, with which they should germinate within about 2 weeks. Hello, 15th of March, and today we're going to be repotting some of the tomato plants, and I'm going to show you some ways that you can deal with leggy tomatoes. So let's have a look at the plants and then we can move on from there. You can see the Gardener's Delight there. They're relatively leggy, they've certainly got to be dealt with today. The House Dwarf Tomato, they're not leggy. I've noticed that this variety does not seem to go leggy, so very good indeed. Here we have the Grushovka. That's a bush tomato like the house tomato, that is not leggy. This one here is more Gardener's Delight, and you can see they are very leggy, at least the two at the front are. So the Gardener's Delight tomatoes are the leggiest. One would expect that because they're a vining tomato, otherwise known as an indeterminate tomato. They want to grow tall, so you can see they're quite leggy. The Grushovka, they're a tall bush tomato, so they would be known as a determinate tomato, bush tomato, and the house tomato, you would call that a bush tomato, a determinate tomato as well. So let's do some repotting, and this really will help these plants. We'll start by getting a Gardener's Delight plant out, so let's have a look at this. Just gently get one of these out, and you really want to make sure you're careful when you get your plant out. There we are. So a not too bad little root ball there. So I'm going to take a pot this size, and I'm going to be filling it with multi-purpose compost mixed with some of my own compost from one of my compost bins, and I'm going to be using a mix roughly of half and half, 50% of each. If you're going to be buying compost, something like Westland vegetable compost, I've grown good vegetables with that in the past. I've never used it for tomatoes, but maybe if you put something similar to that, so about 60% multi-purpose compost and 40% of that vegetable compost, mix that together, you should have good results with that. You could use a bit of well-rotted horse manure, so maybe 40% well-rotted horse manure mixed with 60% of multi-purpose compost. So multi-purpose compost, once again, this is home-based brand with nothing else added to it, and this here is some of my own compost from my compost bin. I want it to have a bit of my own composting, because they need to have some nutrients, because they're going to be in these pots now probably for at least another 2 months, so they need to have enough nutrients in there in order to grow so they don't get any deficiencies, etc. So we're going to go roughly half each and simply proceed to mix it up in my washing up bowl there. I find this very useful indeed. I'm now going to fill up my pot here with the compost mix and leave a little bit of a hole in the middle. Push like that. Push it down the sides, firm the sides up a bit, and I'm going to gently take my little Gardener's Delight plant. Now, when I push this in, I'm going to push it in nice and deep. So you can see that there, like that. And then simply proceed to get my compost mix. And I want to be about 2 mils below where the first set of leaves start. You can put these in nice and deep, and it'll really help you to get a nice, strong and sturdy plant, and you'll be really glad you did this. In fact, I'm going to go with a bit more in, like so, and firm your compost down around the edge. It's about 1/8 of an inch, I suppose. And there we are. So you can see that there. And that's about it, really. So I've got my 3 plants here. So it's going to be at least 6 weeks or so, maybe a bit longer, before I plant them out here in the polytunnel, and certainly longer than that if they're going to be going outside. So I've got to look after them until then. Now, these shouldn't need feeding because I've got some of my own lovely compost in them, so it should be just fine. But I do have to protect them from cold, but at the same time I don't want them to get leggy. So what I quite often do is utilise polystyrene containers such as this. And what I do is I put them in like this, and I can leave them out here during the day. Also in here I've got little chili plants and little aubergine plants as well, which I will be treating the same way. And if a cold night is coming, I don't really want these out here below about 6 degrees C, which is around 43 degrees Fahrenheit. They probably could take a little bit cooler than that, but I don't want to risk it. So at night, best practice really, what I do is I lift this all up and I take it inside. Keep it out here during the day as long as it's not too cold, so I can get the most of the light, and then take them in overnight. Another option I could consider doing is something along these lines, and I've got my little mini greenhouse here. So I just open this up, and of course it's within a polytunnel. Put my hand in there, I really can feel the warmth, even though it's starting to cool down now. Open that like so, and I can simply proceed to put that in there like that, put the lid on the top, put that down and zip it up. That too would be okay for night time as well. But you know, if you want something that's more foolproof, you know, so you can relax a bit, take it inside. But yeah, so going to be doing that with most of the rest of the tomatoes you've seen, and we shall wait for planting out now. So we're now on the 2nd of May, and I've got some absolutely beautiful tomato plants right here. They really benefited from the repot, and in my opinion, the addition of the compost from the Dalek compost bin mixed with the multi-purpose compost, that in combination with the bigger pot really has helped to create some lovely plants here. They look absolutely lovely. So I'll give you an example. Let's start with Gardener's Delight, because many people are very much aware of Gardener's Delight. So look at that, that's a really nice strong plant there. I've got all sorts going on here. What have we got here? This one here is Groshovka. Nice plant there as well. So I will show you the house tomato. So I'm really excited to see how the house tomato does. So these are actually planted on the same day, but these ones are minus the repot, so you can really see the difference there. These are going to be saved for an outdoor tomato growing project, but so this one here is going to be planted in the ground here in the tunnel. So really good and really strong plants, and they're going to be planted out in this polytunnel in a moment. So you can see these polystyrene trays here So the tomato plants, amongst many other plants, I keep them in there. I can keep some water in the bottom. They don't have holes in, so I can keep them well watered. Watering from underneath, very good idea, particularly things such as tomatoes, which can suffer from blight, but we'll get a little bit into the watering of tomatoes at a later date. But on nights where it's frost or cold, what I do is I then proceed to take them inside, then bring them out again into the polytunnel the next day. That way they are far less likely to get leggy. But all in all, very good plants. And what you want to do when you get your plant like this, so you can see, for example, here, what I like to do, looking at that, you know, these little side shoots here, spurs, whatever you want to call them, I just simply take them off. So you don't really want those. You want to keep your plants, you know, nice and upright, nice and disciplined, and nice and strong. So we're going to plant these out now here in the polytunnel. So I've got my plants spotted out. They're about a foot to about 15 inches apart, so that's about 30 to about 39, 40 centimeters, something along those lines. And I've got my tape measure. It's quite an informal approach, really. I'm not particularly sort of fastidious about my spacings, but yeah, I'm happy, you know, to put them in where they are. So you can see these little broad bean plants I've got growing here. These will be finished long before these, you know, these tomato plants are finished. So these will be quite fine, and these will be coming out, and then the tomato plants can just continue in all their glory to carry on once the broad beans are finished. So we're going to plant out. So you can see here, what I've got is some composted horse manure. So I've enriched the bed, did that about an hour or so before I started making this video. I'm very much a believer in always adding to the growing medium, always adding to the soil, always sort of just returning the nutrients, really. So you've got a nice growing medium in order to produce nice strong plants and then good crops, and hopefully a strong you from eating those lovely crops. So we're going to be planting out. Now, when I plant out tomatoes, I'm very much a believer in planting them deep. I want a nice strong plant. And for example, on this Groshovka, I'll show you here, look. So you can see where the stem is. I'm actually going to plant it below this sort of truss here. That's where I'm going to put it, like there, where my nail is. So I hope you can see that okay. That's where it's going to go. So they're going to go in nice and deep, and I'm going to firm them in, because I want them to be really strong plants and give them a good chance to grow off and give a nice crop. So just another example here. So this is a gardener's delight, and if you look at that, look, it's got all these little sort of side spurs on that you don't want. So I will show you what I do. So if you look at that plant there, look, just like that. So I take off ones like that, don't want it. This one here, no, that's okay. This one here, look, I don't want that. Don't want that either. And I don't want that. So I want nice sort of, I want to keep the ones growing out sideways, but I don't want the little, like that one there, look. I don't want that one either. So I'm going to take that off. That there, look, don't want that either. And just, you know, give yourself a good look at the plant and give yourself a chance to sort of remove the shoots you don't want. And that's what you want. A nice upright sort of, here we go, look. One there, look. See that? We'll have that off as well. So we're going to put this Gardener's Delight plant in. So we're going to just gently pop it out the pot. You want to make sure, look at that, lovely. Now that's a nice root ball, really good. It's not growing through the bottom of the pot too much yet, so it should really be, you know, a nice strong root ball there, nice plant, really good. So I'm going to just dig down using my trowel, just like so, and put it out like this. So I'm always adding to my growing mediums. So for example, last autumn I mulched it with some grass mulch and leaves that I made here in the tunnel, and yep, it really will benefit from that, because you want to always be thinking about adding to your growing mediums, always adding to the nutrition of the soil. So there we go. So that's in like that, and I'm just going to get a little close up on that so you can see how deep that is. And I'm now going to just put my growing medium around it like that. So that's held really upright, which is really what I want. There we are, look, that's like that. And I'm going to just push that down. Really firm your plants in so they are standing nice and straight and nice and strong. So all of these are going to be planted the same way. So this is Groshovka. Probably pronouncing that completely wrong, but doesn't matter. So we're going to be just digging down, get some nice depth. This composted horse manure is really good. Used it last year and just produces such marvellous crops, really does. And yeah, so we then just once again, I'm going to the same depth again, and that's it really, just like that. And of course, remember your tags with what you're growing, particularly if you're growing more than one variety. It's nice to be able to remember what you're growing. And as I've shown earlier, any little side shoots I see, I just remove them whilst planting. Good time to just do it whenever you see them. And all I'm doing is following suit. So the house tomato, let's have a look at that, see how that has come out. Just pop that out. There you go, look at that. Looks nice, doesn't it? So really happy with that one. And that's going at the front because it's a lower growing tomato. And depth wise, I'm actually going to be going a bit shallower, and I'll give you a close-up and you can see why. So you can see they are short, sturdy plants. Once again, I am taking out the side shoots like that, once again exactly the same. And I'm going to be putting in this depth-wise probably to about there. Now actually, it'd probably be okay if I put this in to the level of the compost, because these are bred to not go sort of spindly. At least that's the impression I'm certainly getting with these anyway. But never mind, I'm going to put it in, still relatively deep, and we should push that in. And this has actually got some little flowers forming already, which is quite nice. Expecting some nice early crops from this variety. So I've got 4 Gardener's Delight planted out, 2 Groshovka and 1 house tomato. Now, what I've done is I've actually removed some of the lower leaves here so that the leaves aren't touching the growing medium. If you can do that, that can be a good idea. So, be much harder, of course, with the house tomato, but I'm going to do it anyway. So down here, look, see them lower leaves? Just taking them off, just so it's not touching the moist growing medium underneath the plant. So watering, when you water, try your hardest not to get the leaves wet. So watering can like this without a rose can be very good, and just water like that around it so that you're not getting the leaves wet. That can be a blight prevention technique, as also can be growing your tomato plants in a greenhouse or a polytunnel, as you see me doing here. It's not foolproof, but you are less likely to get blight if you grow tomato plants under cover. So water regularly. When you've got fruit on there, particularly when they're ripening, don't allow the growing medium to dry out. In fact, never allow the growing medium to dry out. But when you've got your fruit on there, you want to be watering regularly, because if it dries out and then you suddenly give it loads of water, the plant can then put loads of water into the fruit and then it can proceed to split, which is very annoying, and you really don't want that to happen. So water regularly. This growing medium here is very moisture retentive. I can feel the moisture in it, so I'm not going to give them too much water. I'll probably water them about twice a week at this early stage, but of course it will depend very much on the weather when the plant has fruit on it. If it's very warm, I'll be watering more often, and probably when the fruit is ripening, swelling, etc., I'll be watering at least every other day, maybe every day, but we'll cover that when we come to it. So feeding, now I'm not going to be feeding these. I'm confident that my growing medium here is nutritious enough to sustain these plants until I take them out, probably in the autumn. But you could consider using something like an organic tomato feed. They could be good. You could put a bit of potash around your plant, something like that. But ideally, if you can, get a nice strong growing medium. But yeah, anyway, I'm expecting some big things from these plants, and I'll see you later in the year. An important point here, so currently the 2nd of May, we could still get frosts around here. It's USDA zone 8B here. The general recommendation around here is that you don't put your plants out, your delicate plants, until around the end of May time. So frost could still indeed happen here. Now, if the temperature was going to go below about 4 degrees C, which is about 39 Fahrenheit, I would consider doing something like this, getting a plant pot and putting it over the plants. Good when the plant's small like this, because you could do this, put the plant pot over, and you could put like a little sort of, I don't know, a sheet or a blanket over the top, or even some bubble wrap to give it a little bit more insulation, a bit more chance. Ideally, I wouldn't subject my plants to less than about 6 degrees C, which is about 42, 43 Fahrenheit, something like that. But I'm confident that these could take as low as about 4 degrees C because they're very sturdy plants. But you know, you don't want to sort of risk losing your plant. So if it's going to go below about 6 degrees C, 42, 43 Fahrenheit, you could consider doing something like this, you know, during the night. Get it ready before the frost comes that night, or close to the frost. I think you're understanding what I'm trying to say here. They're not hardy plants. They won't tolerate really cold or cold temperatures. But yeah, of course, you can always wait a little bit longer before you plant out. The end of May, for example, these would have been perfectly okay in them pots for a little bit longer. But we've had a nice mild spring so far, and I've made a decision to plant them out. But remember, don't cast a clout till May is out, and beware of frost on your delicate plants.